Welcome back to the Liberty Underground. If you'd like to call the show, the number is 727-441-3000. Toll free, 1-866-826-1340, or streaming live on 1787network.com. Now, in studio with us, and I love this story, and I've been talking to her all week this week, and she's very lovely. And, I'd like to start out saying this. Everybody says, they kind of go in saying, well, they're just out to protect us, or, maybe they're not doing so bad up there, and then it affects them. And it inspires that person to really look at everything and get involved. And I love when that happens. So, I love hearing these stories. But we have Haydee Oropesa.
Yes.
And
Good
then
morning.
Also Donald Harrison. Sorry. He came in and I wasn't expecting you. But now you've had a situation with a representative who we do know, and I did actually speak to this week as well. So we'll go into all of that. And that was Mike Fasano. But you're having an issue with your homeowners association that you wanted him to address as one of his constituents.
Right. And I was contacting his office as a homeowner.
Right.
Because I own a townhouse in that community. And so I'm representing myself and the other homeowners who have recently been challenged during budget time because we're behind the eight ball because of homeowners who are not paying maintenance dues. And so further compounding that problem is the glut of foreclosures. So in 2010, Representative Fasano, who was a senator at the time, sponsored Senate Bill 1196. And what it did is it amended Florida Statute 720.3053. And seemingly right now, there's a lack of clarity as to that statute, which some HOA attorneys are interpreting as saying that HOAs are unable to shut off utility services, water.
Because some HOAs actually combine your utility services in your fees. Now, not all of them do, but the one that you are at right now, those are combined in the same fee.
That's correct, Danielle. That's correct. And so what we were advised by our former HOA attorney was that now this new law, which Fasano had contributed to amending, they were advising us you can't shut off the water on owners who will not contribute to their equal share of the maintenance dues, but yet they're getting the water. So what we recently attempted to do was, and because we have homeowners at budget time angrily saying, why do I have to suffer a maintenance due hike to pay for those who refuse to pay, even though they benefit from the water? So I said, well, we're going to have to then legislatively create change because the statute is apparently prohibiting us from taking that step. So in 2011, we spent like $30,000. The other homeowners that were paying, who are underwater on their homes, who are struggling because of the recession or the economic slump we've suffered, all of a sudden we have to tell them, I'm sorry, but we have to increase your fees.
Your rates are going up.
Your rates are going up.
Even though you're trying to stay out of foreclosure yourself.
Right. And you're struggling financially. So I decided that I was going to I did a little research on the law and found out that Representative Fasano was the one that was the forefront on that law. And so I contacted his office. I spoke to his legislative aide, Gregory Giordano, who advised via email to me that he understood our position and agreed with it, that it was legitimate and that it was a fair request to be looked into. But he was not the one that wanted to do it because he was committed to 6 standalone bills. Right
now, and for people who are listening, when these legislators come in, they are limited to 6 bills that they can introduce on the floor.
Right.
Now, what they don't tell the average constituent is that if one of those bills fails in committee or if it goes through and starts, going through the process, they can actually introduce another one. So although he was telling you the truth, they can only introduce 6 new ones. There is ways down the road, if one of those bills were to fail in committee, that he could introduce another one for you.
Right. But he didn't give me that explanation. He just simply said, no, sorry, we understand your position. What you're trying to do is a reasonable request, but we're not the office that's going to do that. So you need to go to Senator Jeff Brandes' office.
And that's your representative.
And that is my senator. Yes, ma'am. So I spoke with his legislative aide. As of this date, I've been contacting Chris Spencer since the middle of December. And I am still awaiting Senator Jeff Brandis's response or his position, which he's not indicated to me, his constituent who's continually been going to his office. I went, Representative Fasano's legislative aide told me, why don't you go to your senator and have him look into it, proposing or introducing a bill to rectify the matter. And I did. And so Senator Brandis's office told me that I needed to go back to Representative Fasano's office because even though he was limited by 6 bills, he was limited by amendments, introducing amendments.
And he was the one that first introduced this bill in the first place.
And so that was another factor in their position as to who should rectify the problem. So they've
sent you back and forth, basically.
I feel like a ping pong.
Yeah, and in my experience, they do this so that eventually you'll just get tired and say, you know what, forget it, and move on.
Right. So I don't feel that I'm getting any response.
Folks, do you see the next window treatment here? Do you see that part? I mean, again, you got one going one going the other. Just see the next treatment part, but go ahead.
Okay. Now, you eventually did get to speak with Representative Fasano.
So when I am sent back to Representative Fasano's office, then I call again, or I email Gregory Giordano, and I tell him, well, I've learned that although Representative Fasano is limited by 6 bills, he can introduce unlimited amount of amendments. So can you please see about doing that? He emailed me back and then asked me to submit a mandatory language that I wanted them to consider.
Which I did read through the emails, and I found it a little funny that the legislative aide to Representative Mike Fasano actually wrote back to a constituent, send me the language of the bill, of the amendment you'd like us to introduce. Like, all of a sudden, it's now on the burden of you to propose language to the legislature in Tallahassee instead of them, the ones we actually pay to legislate, do that.
So I did. I basically said, I'm not going to draft the actual language, but I've been pretty clear and narrowed what the problem is. And so I think it's not that hard to come up with the language that's going to solve the problem that I'm raising. I didn't get a response. So I let a week pass by. I called January 9th. Representative Fasano picked up the phone. At that time, he immediately wanted to know what my address was. And I told him, sir, I understand that you're probably trying to figure out where I live because then you're going to bounce me back to my representative. But I assure you, I've already gone to my representatives and I'm coming to you because via email communications, I've indicated to your legislative aide that you're the lawmaker who created the problem that I'm seeking to have changed.
You're not playing their ping pong game.
Right. So he became very defensive, and I assured him, I said to him, listen, I'm not trying to attack you or blame you. I don't think you intended to create the problem that my community is suffering from. But I'm asking you to please look into changing it. So he became very combative. And then he started giving reasons for why he introduced that bill. He began saying, well, legislative attorneys told me it was unconstitutional to shut off water. I asked him which attorney did that. He failed to provide a name. And then he followed up with saying, well, the case law says that it's unconstitutional to shut off water. And I asked him, well, can you provide a legal site for me to read that case? And then he said, I don't know. At which point I said, sir, you're not going to appease me. I'm not going to go away with these insufficient answers that you're giving me. So at that time, he said, do you speak to your clients that way? And I said, well, sir, I speak to people who fail to give me a straight answer to a legitimate question. Yes, sir, I do speak to them that way. At which point he asked me, give me your name. I'd like to call the Florida bar to file a grievance against you. And I said, well, my name is a little difficult. So I said, let me email you. I don't want you to misspell my name when you do file the complaint against me. And within minutes, I emailed him confirming the discussion that had just transpired over the phone.
Which and you did send me. And now, and we, you spoke to us earlier in the week and I think maybe late last week, and we've been working on this all week. And I reached out to Representative Fasano's office and to give them equal time on the show. And we do try to do that in every situation. If we have one person, saying that this is the situation, we do try to give equal time to the other person. So Mr. Fasano, Representative Fasano, did call me back. Okay. It wasn't his aide. And he tells a very different story And it was an interesting conversation because he says, oh, no, we completely agreed with her. And I told my staff to get right on that, to introduce this in the next legislative session. And I said, well, I'm very glad to hear that, Representative Fasano, and I'd like to give you equal time on our show to explain that to our listeners. And he said, well, I don't think that's necessary, but I wanted to tell you that I completely agree with her. And me and my staff are going to do everything we can in the next legislative session. And I said, well, that's odd that you wouldn't want to tell that to our listeners.
And his constituents.
And he said, thank you. Have a good day. Click. And then followed up with an email to say the exact same thing.
Well,
okay.
And the email that you forwarded to me, thank you. He indicated that I'm from Pinellas.
Right.
He represents Pasco. And that's it. So, but the law yet, it impacts the whole state. So for him to be unconcerned about a law that affects the whole state, he's just looking out for his constituents, which are also affected negatively because of the law that I'm trying to have changed.
Right. And he also goes on to say, and because this was in the email, which was not something, although he does say per our conversation, it was not actually something he had said to me over the phone. He did try to say that the law that you're talking about was, put in place way before he was ever elected, which we know because you have the actual numbers
bill,
and the Senate bills, which was introduced by him.
In the email he said that he and his staff understand that it was there for many years. That's incorrect. It's been there since 2010.
Yeah.
Now, here's the other thing, though, and the one thing to add to this. We are his constituents.
We are, personally, me and you.
I live in the district. So next week, we're going to go down there with this information and make sure that it gets there and say, now you have one of your constituents that are actually complaining about this. So
that argument will be void.
So your argument's null and void there. And now you have to start addressing the issue.
Right.
And, not lay up on Fasano. He always claims to be the champion of the people. Now maybe not be the time when you might be able to prove that or not.
Well, and for the champion of the people, and we haven't had much dealings with Representative Fasano, but we have had a couple, and the couple occasions that he's been very cordial and can I come to your meeting and speak, and then he chooses not to show up at every occasion. So I mean, as far as I wouldn't know if he's an honest person or not. I've never met him. Although he has reached out so that we could meet him on several occasions, he has not actually been to one of those that he has said that he would attend. So I cannot comment a lot on Mr. Fasano because honestly, I haven't met him and I've only spoken to him on this one conversation, and he very quickly hung up.
Yeah, Mr. Fasano's not here, but this is the typical political speak. There is some truth to what he says that this law has been around for a number of years. But the law that was amended in 2010 through his act is what changed. Mm-hmm. Prior to that, it was fairly clear, and the courts have answered that you can, as part of the overall fee, you can cut off those utilities. When he introduced the amendment in 2010, it says that you have to understand the statute. It is a notice requirement. You got to give them notice. You're not paying. You give them a 14-day hearing. And at that 14-day hearing, they will then determine whether or not you are in violation, whether you're subject to fines up to $100 a day to a maximum of $1,000 in the aggregate. Mm-hmm. What Mr. Fasano's legislation did is sort of muddied what was clear. He muddied what was clear by simply putting in language that this subsection does not include basically access to the parking lot, thusly getting into your own unit, nor does it apply to utilities. By doing that, as an attorney with an HOA, you know that language must mean something. So in abundance of precaution, lawyers are advising their HOAs, don't do it. Because if I, as attorney, advise you, go ahead, you can continue to do that, and I'm wrong, then you're going to turn around and want to sue me. And so lawyers are like psychiatrists. In a bunch of precaution, we're going to be conservative and say, just don't do it. The Fifth Amendment does not allow someone to take private property, which in this case is water, right, for public use. So a court cannot order a homeowners association to give water to somebody without compensation because that's violative of the Constitution. What he's done is he's raised this issue. I've advised Haydee as an attorney that you can continue to turn off water like anyone else because this section, I would argue, wouldn't even apply anyway. Right. That you have a Fifth Amendment contract right. I give you water, you pay me bill. You stop paying bill, I stop giving you water. And I don't think that, even though Mike Mr. Fasano's bill seemed and legislation that went in effect seemed to have muddied the water. It makes it harder and more expensive now for homeowners associations to deal with it. It was quite clear up till 2010 until this legislation was changed.
And and I'd like to point out, I mean, if you're buying water from any other source and you don't pay, they will turn you off.
That is correct.
But now what this law has done is made it to where HOAs are, they don't know if they have a legal standing or not. They don't know if they can do it. So they're siding on the air of caution because they don't want to be hit with fines and all these other things, which I completely understand them doing that. But especially, as a representative, knowing that the housing market in Florida is really suffering.
Well,
we should be trying to clear up these issues.
Representative Fasano, in his Twitter account, just submitted a tweet saying that we're leading the nation in foreclosures.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. And here's the other thing. It shows you when these guys get involved like Fasano, that the stuff that they make ends up making more problems than it makes good. Because I would imagine that putting all of this together and the way that it was, because it wasn't probably always like this for the HOA, but it turned this way. And the reason it was turned is that it was a money saver. It would save you money if everybody together decides that we're just going to put it all in one thing. Less billing for the company, which means, less money that everybody has to spend. They've done it with cable in some places as well. I know they tried to do it with cable.
And we just canceled our bulk cable. What my community did is we canceled the bulk Bright House cable contract, and we gave back each owner $26 back as far as a reduction.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to shrink the HOA.
Yeah. Right.
I'm trying to lessen their involvement in homeowners' lives.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to transition from a master water meter to individual meter and telling the owners, just pay what you use.
Yeah.
Right.
We've budgeted in our HOA dues $100 for water sewer. If we transition to make it just an individual responsibility cost, then the homeowner is going to save money.
Yeah.
That's going to help the economy, and it's going to help the little guy that Representative Fasano says he helps and he champions for, who's struggling financially in some cases. So I don't see how that's not something that he wants to take up.
Right.
Yeah.
And switching the bulk cable is actually something that's quite easy, but when you're looking at something like water and sewer services, this is a much bigger, to go and say, well, just have everybody on their own meter. Well, that's easier said than done. That's a process. Water systems are very complicated, and to do that would take a major overhaul in that community, where him as a legislator could fix the law that he introduced.
That's right.
And make it much easier on your community.
That's right.
And we'll go past this point and let's get to this other thing. You had a concern that you took to your elected representative. It's a legitimate and it's a valid concern. You're a professional person. You are by trade. You are a person that is a professional in the legal industry, and so you're not complaining about something to the wrong part of government. You're going right to the source, and to see this treatment that you get back and forth is one of those things that. Like, did you think that it was going to be like this when you first started to go in there and talk to him?
No, and I've never been politically involved, ever. I'm the first person in my family. My parents came from Cuba right after Fidel Castro took power. And I'm the first person in my family that attained a law degree, that finished school. And so I've been a practicing attorney here in Florida for 13 years, and I don't have any political ambitions. I just was trying to change a real problem that is affecting real people. And so I was very taken aback that a lawmaker would angrily over the phone threaten my livelihood just because I'm trying to change a law that he created.
You didn't even threaten him or anything.
I didn't threaten him. Yeah, I just said, I challenged him on the answers that were not valid that he was giving me, that there was case law that was that held that shutting off water is unconstitutional. Well, I did research this past weekend, and I couldn't find one case that said it was unconstitutional. So when I asked him, which case are you referring to, sir? And he said he didn't know. Then why are you giving me that answer?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So when I kept pushing him, then I feel he reverted to bullying tactics to make me shut up and to go away and to threaten my livelihood. So I decided I'm not going to take that. If this is the one time that I'm going to be politically involved, it's going to be this one time.
Yeah.
Because I'm not going to take that.
Exactly. And nor should anybody else take that, as a matter of fact. It's one of those things where if we had elected representatives that acted the way that they should be acting, which is straight answers when people are coming to ask them questions, when it's not giving them the runaround and all this other stuff, because a lot of times they just get, and they'll do this over and over again.
Well, and they started with her. Well, go to this person. Well, no, go back to him.
Well, legal statute says this. And if the normal layperson who doesn't have anywhere near the expertise that you have when it comes to the legal profession, when they hear something like that, they don't even have the ability to question that because they wouldn't even know where to look. Because, I mean, again, we do this stuff all the time, and I got to ask Danielle when it comes to that kind of crap. I wouldn't know nothing. I mean, whatever. But I know when somebody's BSing me too. Right. And when you go, there's a legal statute. Well, what's that statute? Well, I really don't know the number to that statute, but just shut up. And if you don't, I'm going to report you.
But think of the average, maybe a little older person or an elderly person that, calls their representative in all good faith that their representative is going to represent them. And they give them these big words and it, there's legal precedent and there's, constitutionality issues and things like that. Right. And the average person is going to go, oh, okay, I didn't know that. Because they don't have the tenacity and the know-how and some of the experience that we have with these guys. And that's what happens. And that's why these representatives are not representing us anymore, because they've lost that you work for me. You will answer to me.
And I'm not going to stop until 2014, which is when Representative Fasano has to run again if he's opposed. I'm not going to stop, and I'm going to be in Pasco to make his constituents aware of a law that may be affecting them as well.
Right.
And I'm going to disseminate flyers and inform them.
Yeah. Now, I think you also put a website together. So a couple more things. If you could let people know where to be able to contact you, if they have a similar story or something like that, where they could contact you. You can always give us a call and contact us, Alex at 1787network.com. But Haydee, if they wanted to get in touch with you, how can they get in touch with you?
I have a 1-800 number with my business. 1-800 number, 1-800-774-9883. If they want to call my cell, 727-214-4930. I'd be happy to answer whatever questions.
And any email?
I have Oropesa Defense, O-R-O-P as in Peter, E-S-A, D as in David, E-F as in Frank, E-N-S-E, Oropesa Defense at Gmail.
At gmail.com. Okay, great. Again, it was, I remember when I took the call, I was like, it's always nice when somebody is like, okay, it's on. Okay, it's on now.
And I love that.
I'm just going to hammer these people. They're not going to stop me. And it's that kind of attitude that we got to have more of.
And that's what's going to fix things. When we as a people start going to our representatives saying, no, sir, you work for me. That's when things are going to change.
Yeah, or expose them for what they are.
I want to thank you all for allowing me the opportunity to come here and give me an opportunity to share this with your listeners.
It was our pleasure. Trust me, it was our pleasure. Haydee, thank you so much. Hour number 1 is in the bag, and hour number 2 is coming up. We got a councilman we got somebody running for office to stop some of these atrocities from happening. But you'll get to that in the next hour. You're listening to Liberty Underground.
Just put that hammer down and give it hell. Eastbound and down, load it up and truck it. Are we gonna do what they say can't be done? We've got a long way to go and a short time to get there. I'm eastbound up. Watch on there.